here today with Gary Shoemake, and he is an urban beekeeper. So we thought it'd be super fun to come and check out what he's doing and learn a little bit about that. So, hi Gary.
Hi.
I would love it if you would teach us a little bit about what it means to be an urban beekeeper. How on earth did you get started with this?
I don't really know what was the first feeling of like I want to keep bees. Back in the 80s, I went to the state fair in Raleigh, and the North Carolina State Beekeepers Association was set up. They set up a booth every year, and I got some information. It was just interesting, and I had always wanted to keep bees. And as I got older, I thought, well, that would be a nice hobby as I retired. I've been keeping bees about 13 years. I still haven't retired, but I do enjoy keeping bees. It's just something relaxing when you're out with the bees. Some say, well, they do it for the environment, you know, for that part of it. And then they fall in love with their bees, and a lot of people do, and they'll tell you, I love my bees. I hate it when I accidentally squish one and kill it, you know, and that kind of stuff. So, you know, we think of our bees kind of like we do our dogs, you know, they're our pets. Till they sting us, and then it makes us mad. I think a lot of it is, especially from work, you get out into the bee yard and you're working your bees, and it clears your mind. You concentrate on the bees, and it's almost like a relaxation. You know, as long as the bees are happy, you know, they're not after you. But I think that has something. It's almost like riding a motorcycle. You know, you get out and you key in on your ride, and you know, trying to be safe. And that's the same with bees. You're working your bees and you're concentrating with them. When I first started, my wife would videotape me sometimes, and she would tell me, she would be standing way back, and she would say, if you could see how many bees was swarming around you, you wouldn't be doing that. But you don't see that. You're doing something. So
you're in the zone.
You know, yeah, that's right. You're in the zone.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what people like about it. A lot of people, first thing they think of when they think about bees is being stung. Right. You know, and honeybees are pretty docile. They're workers. And they're not looking to sting you. You know, if you see them out in your yard, they're usually working flowers or something like that. For pollination purposes, you know, a honeybee is a great pollinator. And people do say that they notice a change in their garden or in their floral blooms and that type of stuff. When there's bees close by, you know, bees will go up to about 3 miles to forage. And one reason they're great pollinators is if a honeybee goes out and she's going to pollinate a cucumber. She's going to bring back pollen from cucumbers. She does cucumbers. She doesn't see a dandelion and go, oh, I'm going to grab some off that dandelion right quick. No, she works cucumbers until she gets back. There's a lot of different kind of bees. There's Italians, there's Russians, there's a lot of different kinds. People ask me, they say, what kind of bees do you keep? I keep honeybees. My bees are mutts. You know, and it's almost like society. You need a little bit of everything to make a community, and that's the way the bees are. It's almost like the United States. We're a melting pot. Right. And I think the more diverse your hive is, I think the stronger that it is, because each bee has a certain thing that they're better at than the other. I put out a swarm trap every year, and it's built to be the size that bees look for. They look for a certain size cavity in a tree when they are looking. So we've built this box to be that size with the opening that they like and ventilation. And you can put it in different places. You can put it up high in a tree. It's funny because I put mine right beside my swimming pool. My swimming pool has a wall that's about 3 or 4 foot high around one edge of it. And I set it there, and I catch a swarm every spring in it. This year I caught 2. But the swarm trap, there's different kinds of swarm traps. I usually put one frame in mine for the odor. They'll be attracted to the odor of it. But you'll see a little activity around it if you watch it on a regular basis, because scout bees will go out and scout They'll go in, they'll measure the inside. You can see them outside. They'll go up and down, side to side, all the way around, measuring it to see if it's suitable. And then they'll go back and tell the other bees, okay, I found a spot, y'all let's go. And they all take off and go. There's 3 castes of bees inside the hive. 2 of them are female and 1 is a male. There's the queen bee, who's always a female, and then all of the workers, and all the workers are females. So then you have the male bee, which is the drone. He's a little bit bigger bee, and you can tell him when you go through the hive. And the females do all the work. The drones don't do any work. Their primary job is to mate with the queen. And they do not mate in the hive. The queen does not mate with her drones. I mean, I guess she could, but there's a thing called a drone congregation area, and the drones will go out to an area and congregate. They just fly waiting for a queen to fly through, and as she flies through, then they mate with her. And the more drones she can mate with, the better queen she is, the better her offspring. And she will only mate that one flight. Once she takes that mating flight, she comes back to the hive, and she will not leave the hive again unless she swarms with the bees. She does not leave the hive again.
Wow. So some would say, as in life.
And that happens up in the air. It doesn't happen on the ground. It's all through flight.
Gotcha.
And the drone, even if the hive was under attack, the drone can't sting you. The drone doesn't have a stinger. The drone doesn't collect any nectar, any pollen. The female bees feed the drones, take care of the drones. Now, and you're talking about the females, I have 2 daughters. So I always like this story. When the fall of the year comes, the drones are useless because the female mates, the queen mates in the summer months. So the workers will drag the drones out of the hive and toss them out on the ground. And they have no more use for them, and they eat a lot. They're bigger bees, so they don't want the drones to eat up all of their winter stores that they've kept, so they drag them out, and you'll see the drones laying on the ground dead. And they'll come out kicking and screaming too. It takes a few females to drag them out, but the drones are an important part. But it is funny that, especially if you have son-in-laws, and you can tell your daughters, do like the bees, just kick them out in the fall of the year. It's football season. Bees key on motion, and if one flies around you, doing this is one of the worst things you can do because they key on that motion. Best thing to do is just walk away. So this is our brood box. It's what we call a brood box. It's kind of like the nursery. The queen will lay eggs in here. They'll raise their brood in here. The bees will emerge. Usually when you get into the smaller box, we call this a medium, and this is a honey super. There can be honey down in here, but usually the honey stays up in these boxes. The entrance of the hive is where there's guard bees at the entrance of the hive. You just take your smoker and you just puff a little smoke in there just to let them know you're coming in, and it masks that pheromones. Bees communicate with pheromones. That's how they communicate inside the hive. And the smoker will mask those pheromones. It also will move the bees. The bees don't really like it, and if you're inside the hive working a frame, you can smoke them lightly and they'll move.
How many bees are in a hive, or approximately?
I would say, you're going to get from 30,000 to maybe 80,000, sometimes maybe even 100,000 bees to a hive. And it's at different times of year. They reproduce, and in the spring of the year at a very fast rate. Bees key on one thing. Their whole summer is to collect enough nectar to turn into honey to last the winter. And they overproduce it. And that's where the beekeepers come in. We try to make it to where there's enough space for them to overproduce, because they'll work and work and work till they have no more space to work. And then the beekeeper takes the extra and makes sure that you leave enough for the bees to survive through the winter. They know their hive. It's one reason why You know, a lot of beekeepers will paint their boxes different colors. The first time the bee leaves the hive, she orientates herself to that hive and where it is. She'll go up and down, side to side, she'll go around it, and then she'll keep making circles, larger and larger circle, to know her way back to that hive. This is a feeder. I can put a quart jar or whatever, a jar of sugar syrup on that hive, and the bees don't have to leave the hive. They can come into it this way. And the reason I've got that on there is I've got there's a retention pond right back here that the bees get their water from. And if it's dried out, you know, we've been through a drought here lately, I'll put a jar of water on it.
How does weather affect the bees?
In the hive, not a whole lot, because they regulate the temperature of the hive. They will take droplets of water in the summertime and put around in the hive, and then you'll see bees on the outside of the hive fanning their wings, and they get an air circulating through the hive to control the temperature. And then in the wintertime, if it gets very cold, they will get into a cluster, and the colder it is, the tighter the cluster is, and they'll move their wing muscles. Their wings won't actually flap, but that creates heat, and the ball kind of rotates. The bees closest to the center or the warmest, and usually the queen bee is in that center of that ball. In this climate that we're in, our bees will fly 12 months out of the year. When you get closer to the mountains or further up north, when the bees go into that winter cluster, they don't come out of it. They're always in it. But here, you know, they may cluster up at night, and if it warms up a little during the day, they'll go out and fly. So, but that's kind of, they regulate the temperature. They can live in the heat or they can live in the cold. Every area has a specific plant that usually is what they make their honey for, and we call it the honey flow. And it'll start around here sometime in April. And our plant of choice is a tree. It's called a Goldberry tree. It's a Goldberry bush. Has a very tiny white flower on it, and you would look at that and you would be amazed to think they get honey, nectar out of that. Our Goldberry is a very sweet honey. I know everybody's heard of sourwood honey. That's the most famous, especially in North Carolina. And when you get into the Piedmont and the mountains, sourwood is where they get the bulk of their honey from. And in the Piedmont area, it's poplar. A tulip poplar is where they get most of their honey from. Most of the honey is collected within a 6 to 7 to 8 week period.
So how does somebody go about it? If they want to get started?
The best thing to do, and the first thing I would do, is I would see if your county has a local Beekeepers Association. Here in Brunswick County, we have the Brunswick County Beekeepers Association. We meet the first Thursday of every month at the county complex in the county extension office. Except for July, we don't meet in July. And that's the best way to get started. You can talk to some of the local beekeepers, find out what they have done. All of our meetings, in fact, we have a rule that we only talk about business for 10 or 15 minutes. Whether we're done or not, we're done. And then we talk about bees for the rest of the time. Beekeepers love to talk about their bees. So if you come to a beekeeping meeting, if it ends at 8 o'clock, they're out in the parking lot till 9 or 9:30 talking about bees. So you're going to learn, and it's a helpful community too. It's kind of like a family. We all love our bees, and you know, like I say, we just talk about bees. There is a North Carolina State Beekeepers Association. In fact, North Carolina has the largest membership of any beekeeper association in the United States. There's a couple in Southport that have bees living in their tree, and they said it didn't matter, we could take it out or just leave it. It didn't bother them, but it went to their neighbor's hummingbird feeder. So I went and purchased, you can buy hummingbird feeders that have bee guards on them, and if the bees can't get the sweetness out of the hummingbird feeder, they're not just going to hang out waiting to try. They'll try to get to it and then they'll leave. So there's things you could do to not come in contact with the honeybees. in Brunswick County, we have a good base of honeybees. When you're out in your yard and you, like in the spring, dandelions are blooming and that kind of stuff, and you want this beautiful yard, and you spray it with a herbicide, that bee doesn't know there's a herbicide on that dandelion, and they're going to come and drink that nectar, get that pollen. Just think about things before you do. Do you really need to spray that dandelion, or do you need to really spray all those weeds and that type of stuff? So, because there are other things out there besides honeybees. There's a lot of pollinators out there, so just to be careful.
If there was an opportunity for you to put one thing up on a billboard in Times Square, what would that be?
That's easy. Be kind. Just be kind. There's enough mean people in this world. Just be kind.